Hi guys, I'm going to share my educational story. In the fall of 2004, I was 20 years old and a mother, and I needed a job. And so a friend of mine, her mother was a special education teacher at an elementary school, and she called me and she said, "Katie, you might want to look into being an assistant, an educational assistant." So I called around to all the local schools, and this was around July, so I really needed a job and was looking for to start in August. So finally, at Anniston Elementary, they did need in Gulfport, they did need a special ed assistant. So I drove over to Anniston Avenue Elementary and I interviewed there for a position. The principal told me that this position would be with an autistic child and it would be one-on-one. I had never had any experience with special education at all for that matter. So I was a little bit nervous, but he told me that we were going to meet the next week if I got the job with the child's mother and the teachers that I would be working with. So that did make me feel a little better. I went home. He called me a few days later and said that he had checked my references and that I had the job. So I was excited because I was going to be able to provide insurance for my son and myself. But I was also nervous because I had never really had experience with this before. Also, I had wanted to be a teacher when I was like young, but then I thought, I'm not going to make any money. So I was currently majoring in journalism. And so I thought, oh, I'll just take this job and I'll be, you know, get through college and then I'll be able to do what I want to do with my career. But um, once I got into the education world and I got bit by the bug, I couldn't get out. So this job started me off as an educator. I met with Clay and his mother and the teachers that I would be working with the next week. And I was really excited, but I was also really nervous. I knew nothing about autism, but his mom had made this binder that was about this thick, probably thicker, probably about this thick, of information about Clay since he was a baby all the way to now. Clay had not had an assistant yet, and they had been fighting and fighting and fighting for him to get one for years, and finally they had it put in his IEP. So he was 12 years old, and he was in fifth grade, and he just finally had an assistant. So I took this binder home, which was really, like I said, huge and daunting, and I read over it and I looked at it and I just tried to really figure out what was going on. Clay was so lucky to have his mother as an advocate for him because she just worked and worked for him. I started the job, and Miss Stokes and I, the teacher that I was going to work with, decided we would meet a few days before school started, about a week before school started, and really talk. And when I got to her classroom to meet with her, she sat me down and she said, "Look, I'm a fifth grade teacher. I have never had an assistant in my classroom. I don't know how to do this, but if you're having trouble or if you feel like we're having an uncomfortable relationship, please let me know." Well, Miss Stokes was the best teacher I've ever seen since I've been in education. The kids wanted to do for her. She was excellent. And Clay was in a regular education classroom. So there were 28 kids in this classroom. 8 of them were gifted, about 6 or 7 of them were special ed, and the rest of them were regular ed. And I mean, she put them all on one playing field. Everyone wanted to work for her. And I saw some of the most impressive gains from all of the students that year. So I think that Miss Stokes really inspired me to become a teacher and want to inspire children like she did. Clay was one of the most entertaining students I've ever worked for. Like I said, he was 12 years old, um, and he was skinny and white as could be. But what he really wanted was to be a black female recording artist. So he would come to school in different personas every day. One day in particular, I remember he came in and he said, "I'm Janet Jackson." And I said, "Oh, okay." So he had black wind pants on and a black shirt. And so while he was doing his work, I was sitting there with him, and all of a sudden he just said, "I'm Clay, Mr. Smith, if you're nasty." And I just could not. I was like, had to walk away because I couldn't contain myself. And if I would have started laughing, that would have been it. Um, Clay was a rather high functioning autistic child, but he had some things that needed to be dealt with. And if he got upset, I found this really interesting. His mom had helped him and other teachers. He had a jar, like a peanut butter jar, full of Cheerios. And if he was getting upset or starting to flap or do any of the autistic, things, I would just hand him this jar of Cheerios. He would open it up, he would eat some Cheerios, and he would be calm. So that was one just excellent thing, just a good example of how his mom and his teachers had worked with him throughout the years. Um, they decided to keep an assistant for Clay, and after Hurricane Katrina, I had to be relocated and came back, so I was not able to be his assistant anymore. But they did keep an assistant for Clay all the way through school, and I'm happy to say that this year, or last year, Clay graduated with a regular diploma, which was something his mom really wanted for him. And he impacted my life, and I've stayed in touch with them, and I've talked to him, several times throughout the years. And I think that, he is going to be successful in life. And what his mother really wanted for him was that when she was gone, was for him to be able to not necessarily, work at a big company, but live without her. And I think that that's definitely something that he's going to be able to do because of his great education.